And hello everyone on YouTube, welcome back to this OpenFOAM C++ introduction. So last video we were talking just a little bit about classes. We were sort of finished with this part of functions, and you will find lots of functions here. These are in my GitHub. Alright, most of them you'll find it there. Some of them I'm still yet to upload as of the time of this video. But most of it you will find it there. For example, you see this vector 2D array C++. Okay, oops, I've already opened it up. So it's over here. This is one of the ways you can add vectors around and how you can work around this pointer problem. I use a slightly different method here using another pointer of a variable. Okay, I start by saying, okay, I want I initialize a pointer variable, okay, and this a will then be the pointer of this vector add result. So basically it's doing this double star thing in a sort of a roundabout way, but if it works, it works. So these are just some of the ways you can do it. You can even do the vector add no function kind of thing. So I kind of just erase this whole function and I just do the for loop over here, the addition of two vectors, this add result here, and I'll actually print out the results. That's one other way of working with vectors. But these will be inside the functions directory. Alright, but I'm making a new directory for classes and objects, okay, so that you can start working on, or you can look into the syntax. You can take a look into the what do you call it? Yes, you can take a look into the syntax. You can take a look into how classes work. So this is the directory I will want to put all the C++ files pertaining to classes here. So you can see that basically I have this vector add result thing, okay, and this actually deals with one-dimensional arrays. Of course, we can have a two-dimensional arrays here. So let me copy that thing over my YouTube .c++ file. Okay, vector, where is it? Vector add YouTube and vector addition YouTube.c++. Okay, and I want to copy it into the classes file here, and I will just do this vector YouTube. Okay, maybe I'll just put as YouTube.cpp. Okay, so this will be the file I'll be like kind of working with you live. Okay, and what roughly the end result should look like is that you will see, alright, let me check how much time is remaining. Okay, I still have about 17-ish minutes. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, the end result is that you'll have this this kind of a syntax here. Okay, so I will have a way of defining my classes, and these are some of the ways of working with classes. I sort of define my classes first, and this is my main file. You can see how short this thing is now once I have defined my classes well. Alright, and you'll notice that this actually looks a lot more like what you see in OpenFOAM. Right? For example, you take a look at the PimpoFOAM source code. Okay, PimpoFOAM source code in OpenFOAM. Alright, for example, PimpoFOAM.c. Alright, you will see lots of things looking like this. So you look at this, it says runtime.run, and you would see include blah 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 .h. Okay, and you will see pimpo.correct, pimpo.loop, and all of these are actually ways you work with structures, classes, objects. This object-oriented programming. So you see this little dot here, where you have some pimple.loop or vectors, and I kind of do this set vector function or whatever that is. These are ways of working with objects and classes. Okay, so this is how basically I kind of group classes together, and that's what we want to explore. So over here I kind of define how my class should look like, and all of these, the void and the integers, these are the separate classes. So I have I have 8 functions within this class. That's a lot of functions, okay? But don't worry, I'll explain what they roughly are, or I'll try to construct it in front of you, so you don't really have to worry too much about what these are. Okay, all of these double vector length, double vector add, you don't really have to look into those anymore. Those are kind of redundant now because I've grouped all my functions into a class, and of course I also initialize some variables. Okay, so and what's the output? This is the end result. Okay, I'll have a C++ program doing this. I will have a vector addition function, and it's able to calculate the individual components of this vector, and I'm also able to calculate the length of a particular vector, for example. Okay, so yeah, that's good. That's well and good so far. Okay, so yeah, this is just an example of what can be done. You can of course tweak this class and object to suit your needs, but I just want to run through them so that you know you can run through this OpenFOAM source code without being too confused. Why are there so many includes and everything? Okay, so at least you see this integer main over here. You roughly know what this is. This is like the main file, and then you see this return 0 here. You know what this end line and everything is, and all of this is of course you're printing stuff out. Of course you don't have a C out here. You use OpenFOAM actually uses this thing called info. Perhaps because there are other ways of they actually have their own in-house defined way of doing their printing. Okay, so there are while loops and everything here, and there are these objects being used here. Okay, so all of these are part of classes and objects. So without further ado, let's start having our classes up and running. So I have a youtube.c++ over here, and again there are a few ways of doing classes. All right, we can normally define the classes over here, because over here is where your int main is, where I'm highlighting this is your main function. And normally when you're starting out with defining classes, you would normally have to define all your classes in this portion of the code. Now the other way of course is to do something called prototyping, which means just like you see this, you kind of define your classes first, and then you write the bulk of the code after your int, your integer, your main function over here. So this is the main function. Normally you would put your classes and functions here. You have to write all the code here, but the thing is that we don't want to have all of this here, right? We don't want to have a big bulk of code here, and then we kind of forget what the main point of the code was doing. So we kind of want to, like when we sort of start reading a code from somewhere else first, we want to see what the main purpose of the code is, and that will be in this int main part. So just like this, for example, this OpenFOAM C, normally we will have all these parts. These are called headers. Alright, and we'll get to that later on. But the point of what I'm trying to say is that when you kind of have a C++ file, you want to kind of make it succinct, make it not too lengthy, so that it's easy for people to see what this code is doing. So most of what you want to see is this int main, and you have this return 0. This is your main function, of course, and the main function is basically what you want to see first. You don't want to get overloaded with data and then, okay, where is your main function? Alright, so instead of writing your class and your functions over here, I'd rather define or prototype my functions and classes over here, and then I will kind of define my main functions of the class over here. And how that was done, okay, oops, let's see, I want to change the directory back here. Okay, let's go here. Right, yeah, how that was done was class C.C++. Yeah, how that was done is basically, well, I have this part over here, this class vectors blah blah blah, and then I kind of defined each of the functions in the class by writing it after the main file. So that's the aim, right? So this is what the end result is. So let's see what we can do to change this set here to something that's more palatable. Alright, so we know that this YouTube C++ works, because if we do G++ YouTube.C++, it will give us a proper file out. So let's start working with classes first. Let's go to YouTube.C++ and we'll start by defining a class, and this is sort of the template you get. If you're not sure, you can always look online. This is a standard template of what a class should look like. Alright, so I'm gonna start like this. Okay, you can always look online, but I'll just start here since I already have a template. Alright, normally what you do, okay, since we're starting, I'll just define the whole class along with all the functions over here. Alright, so let's start with our first class. We'll call this class vectors. Alright, and as with most things in C++, you will need to like close it off like so. You need to have a bracket, a close bracket, and a semicolon. Alright, so what is this public, private, and protected here? I won't go through the protected, but I'll go through like the public and private. Alright, so okay, normally in, let's say in a function or class, we want to have certain variables and functions that from my main file I can access, and from my main file I cannot access. Alright, so if I put a function if I have this, if I want to have a function or sort of a variable that I don't want to mess around with using my main file, I will give it this, I'll put it under the private so-called category, so to speak. There's a proper name for it, but I'll just call it like a category for now. I'll put it in the private category so that I can't mess around with it using my main function. Alright, so I don't want to mess around with the stuff, the variables inside the main function. Then normally I will put it in the private. Okay, and usually good things to put in the private part of the private section of the classes. What good things to put there are like variables and of course other functions you don't want to mess around with. And if you want to access functions, if you want to use the functions explicitly and all, you have to put them in the public portion of this class, so that you can actually use these functions. Okay, So let's start. All right, and yeah, we'll put this public and private here first. Okay, protected is kind of part of the template as well, but I can just put it there, but this for like future reference. Okay, but for now I'm not going to put anything in the protected category, so we'll just leave it as it is. So now the proper name for this is not category, of course. The proper name is called access specifier. All right, the proper name is called access specifier, and these are what these categories, so to speak, are. All right, so remember, if you don't want to mess around with it, or you want to make it harder for the main part of the file to mess around with it, you put it in the private portion or private access specifier. Okay, otherwise you can put it in the public part, the public access specifier. Okay, so that's in C++ methods. So I'm not going to do the private access specifier here first. Yeah, let's deal with public. So since this is like the first time we are dealing with classes, we don't want to overload too much data. All right. Okay, so let's put a function down there. We can actually do int let's say print vector. All right. Okay, there's just a print function. It's like a hello world kind of a thing, so I don't want to do too much. So I will have my two brackets, and apparently here there is no need for a semicolon here, so I'm not going to put a semicolon. So I'm going to put an int print vector, and I'll just put a return 0 over here. Okay, return 0. Now I'll need to put a semicolon there. Oh yes, no semicolons here. Okay, no semicolons there. All right, so so let me do a cout. All right, okay, printing a vector. Okay, so end line. Okay, so that's the most basic of the basic classes. And how then do we call these functions? We have to go to the main part, and we have to define something called an object. Okay, so what's the class again? Okay, how do we work with it, or how do we work with the functions in the class? So it's as follows. You need to sort of import the class into your code, and that's done by doing the following. We need to type the class name, which is called vectors. Okay, and normally classes we like to put them in capital letters. So I put vectors, then I'll type I want to import this vectors class as perhaps vec, vec, small, lowercase, and this is actually called creating an object. All right, importing a class into your main file is known as creating an object. So that's where this object-oriented programming actually comes from. Okay, so once I have vec, I can actually do this, have a function. So I want to print vector, right? Okay, I kind of forgot there should be brackets here. Okay, there should be, always try and put your brackets here. I kind of forgot that. Can you see? When you have this void my method, this is you need to put brackets there anyhow. So anyway, I want to start by printing vectors. So let's put a vec print vectors. Okay, and that's how we start working with classes. Alright, so what do we do first? We need to import the class into this into the main file. Okay, and we need to call the functions. By doing so, we need to specify the object, and then we specify the class in that object. Alright, so we import vectors as this vec. So that's making the object. And vec.printVectors will call what C++ will do, it will look at the vec, VEC actually points to this class called vectors, and then it will look for this function called printVectors. So you'll look for this function printVectors over here, and after that it will start executing this function. So let's try compiling this. Okay, G++ YouTube.C++. Alright, okay, so apparently I have a syntax error. Yeah, it says that the class vector has no member named printVectors. Okay, member is either it could be a function. In this case, it's a function inside the class. Okay, so hope that's not too ambiguous. So I have this. There's no member name printVectors. So do you mean print vector? Yes, I actually did mean that. So I think yeah, there's some typo here. I'll need to delete the S for this syntax error, and let's compile it again. And then it gives me this other error. Okay, so why is this error here? One of the reasons is, of course, I forgot to add this brackets here. Okay, I should have brackets. Okay, so where is this bracket supposed to be placed? Remember, when you execute this function, you're supposed to put this these two brackets over here. All right, even though there's nothing really that you're doing, there's no input you need to give this particular function, you still need to put the brackets there. So let's try doing compilation again, and this time it works. What is this compiled as? Is compiled by default as a.out. Let's run a.out. Okay, so I'll do the vector addition 1, 2, 3, and then you take a look at this. It has this extra line called printing a vector. Okay, so now this is, you know, your introduction or your hello world sort of what do you call that? This is your hello world sort of a class. Okay, this is your first tutorial, so to speak, working with a class, and we have discussed roughly where we want to go, and we'll keep working until we have all of our functions and vectors and everything neatly packed into a class. Okay, so I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.